Well, good morning, everybody. This Thursday has been a much anticipated day in terms of weather forecasting, given the eventual landfall this evening in Florida of Hurricane Helene, which is here. But there's just a lot of other things I think that are important just to see on this. For example, we've talked a lot about the upper level low that's going to be sitting here over the Mid-South that's going to interact with Helene, pulling it through Georgia up towards Tennessee, Kentucky, and then stalling it in the Mid-South before letting it exit. In addition to that, we have another wave coming into the Pacific Northwest. Yesterday's produced wind damage here in parts of the Pacific Northwest, and there's strong winds today that are coming out into the plains through Montana into the western Dakotas on the lead wave that was a part of this. Remember, we're still dealing with the effect of the very positive West Pacific Oscillation, which has been sending systems in this direction. I still think that's going to be important to monitor as we go forward in the forecast, which we'll get to in a few moments. We have some other tropical systems to think about, one off the coast of Mexico. There's actually one under this wave here, which was named this morning. Let's go down to the surface winds, and you'll see it, named Isaac. And we'll take a look at where Isaac is expected to go, which is to stay way out to open ocean. There are actually two relatively healthy African easterly waves that have emerged as well here, and we'll keep an eye on those. But to be honest, in the tropics, my attention is going to go right back to this area once again after we're done talking about Helene for possibly some more development. And again, today, very strong winds throughout the plains. We have red flag warnings stretching through this area. We're just going to have to keep an eye on the risk of fire spreading quickly on winds simply because of how dry this whole region has been for several weeks now. So that's our setup, and that's where we're going to take this over the short term. I have some new ideas for longer range, but I've not put as much thought into it as I'd like to. But I will give you more information at the end of this on South America as well. So sun is rising right now. You notice that the day-night line is running straight north-south. This is just visible satellite imagery, and this is infrared. And that's what we expect around the equinox. And here is Helene. We're going to come back to this in a few moments, but I want you to see just how broad the cloud shield is ahead of it. We had some pretty nasty storms that rolled through here yesterday, including 4 reports of tornadoes. And as this came through, it produced some locally very heavy rain in places we're expecting to be hit again by the hurricane. I think some folks were already thinking that they were getting the influence of the hurricane. That's not. This is the lead system, part of the upper level low that's here, the moisture from the tropics producing this. Take a look at the Pacific Northwest late in the day. We can see some of the deeper cloud shield here that was responsible for some of the storm reports that were in Washington, for example. Very strong winds that rolled through this area with some of this flow here. And then I did notice right here in Colorado, we had a new fire that kind of showed up, and I just thought it would be interesting to take a quick look at the smoke plume from that before we get in to a little bit more detail on the hurricane. So we are expecting over the next 12 hours some fairly rapid intensification. We're already seeing it pretty clearly here on satellite. Most of the very dry air is pretty far away, so we're not just bringing in deep, tendrils of dry air into the core of this system. And the convection at times has been both on the east, the north, the west, and the south sides. And as a result, this system has, a relatively easier path forward to intensifying what we think up to a Category 3 strength storm as it moves over the next 12 hours before we even get to tonight, when it'll be up here in the Big Bend area. Just a reminder about this system. Already out ahead of it, we have had a tremendous amount of rainfall in the last 3 days. We're going to look here nationally first, so we can see the tail end of the system that came through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. Some of the rainfall we got down into parts of Oklahoma and Texas, some bigger storms here. Remember, the frontal boundary hit at the northwest. But if we zoom into the southeast, I just want you to see that even before the hurricane gets here, there are places in Florida, in parts of Georgia, up here against the Blue Ridge Mountains, that have already received 3, 4, 5 inches of rain, some places 7 to 8 inches of rain, even more. So this is all ahead of the hurricane coming through, and it is going to increase the flooding threat in this area in a major way. I don't like to put out terms just to raise hype, but I would start to consider some of the flooding risk in through here to be catastrophic. In other words, I think that if the hurricane forecast verify and we add another to this, we're looking at a foot to maybe 15 inches of rain in places here, and that is an overwhelming amount of water. So we need to be very careful in this area. Please be paying attention to this. Pay attention to all weather alerts. Weather.gov is your main resource. Please use it. Tune into the National Weather Service. Have weather radio. Just make sure that you have multiple ways of staying safe as the flooding threat really increases in this area. Our all hazards weather map shows it. All of these polygons into here, these are counties, of course, that have flood warnings on them right now. And you can see that the hurricane warning is extending very far inland all the way up north of Macon, Georgia. But that's our hurricane warning area. This whole region is under tropical storm warning, including all of Florida, except for these last couple counties here. And the flood watches have been extended now into Arkansas and Tennessee, and I imagine they'll increase into parts of Kentucky as well as time goes forward. We have excessive heat down here in parts of the southwest. We have the red flag warnings and strong winds that'll be in the northern plains, the northwestern plains, and that'll kind of round out to the three big areas we're going to keep an eye on here in the very near term. The latest this morning from the National Hurricane Center, the intensity of the system was 90 miles an hour at their most recent update. They'll be updating this rapidly throughout the day, but they are expecting a jump up to 115 mile an hour sustained winds very, very shortly here. And this is going to be a Category 3 intensity storm, likely at landfall. But take note that the National Hurricane Center is expecting it to move into Georgia and maintain its hurricane strength for a while. So we're expecting quite a bit of wind damage throughout this region as this system comes on shore later this afternoon and this evening. I think somewhere around 7 o'clock is what's being thought. You will note, as I know a lot of you have been paying attention to this, earlier forecast tracks were a bit closer to in the middle of the Big Bend. This is now moving, much closer, I think, to like Apalachicola, that area. Maybe it's still a little bit to the east of that. But there's been this westward trend in the tropical cyclone track, and it's very quickly. By the time I'm doing this tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about this system already moving through most of Georgia. And then it'll be just how long it lingers over this part of the Mid-South before exiting back over to the east. The forecast models right now, as it looks, they're at landfall somewhere strong Category 2, Category 3. We'll just need to pay attention today if it does intensify beyond this. This, again, is just modeling, but it will rapidly decline as it moves through Georgia in its strength. But this is just the latest forecast we've got. And I wanted to point out the National Hurricane Center, of course, naming Isaac, and also just giving the best new look here at Helene. I'd like to show you, we'll go ahead and look at its warning cone. This is, you've already seen this, but again, expecting it to become a major hurricane. Oh, actually, the new update, 100 mile an hour sustained wind, so it's pretty rapidly intensifying now as we speak. There's our hurricane warnings along the Gulf shore here of Florida. And again, where it stalls out will be needing to be watched carefully. I wanted to give you the latest update on the storm surge. We still have a broad area of 10 to 15 feet. Tampa Bay 5 to 8 feet, much lower as you get farther down the coast. But you can see how large of an area we're expecting, quite high wind field and then the resulting storm surge that will come from this. As we work into the risk on severe storms, remember, always in that northwest quadrant of the hurricane. Forgive me, not northwest. Let's call it upper right. So the hurricane's coming in like this. And what you need to watch is, let's just kind of draw the hurricane here, is that you can divide it along its path. And it's always this quadrant that has the greatest risk for having the right wind shear profile to make tornadoes embedded within the system. So that's why we've got the Storm Prediction Center giving a pretty broad area here of slight risk and enhanced risk right along the coast of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Day 2, it moves just a bit farther to the north into North Carolina. But I want to just point out these flood risks are just very substantial. The fact that the excessive rainfall outlook is high in these two corridors, which they've already seen excessive rainfall, is what I'm quite concerned about. So this is through tomorrow morning. And this is the latest update as we look out there, day 2. So this would be Friday into Saturday morning. So this is a multi-day event here. We've already had 2 days of rain. We're now looking at least another 2.5 days of heavy rain across this corridor. And we're going to get in here in a few moments and look at these rainfall totals. But first, I wanted to show you the wind field just so we can kind of get an idea on it. So the vectors kind of show us, let's refresh that. The vectors kind of show us where these strong winds are going to be. So the center of circulation moving here, but take note of what's going on in the northern plains today. This afternoon, very strong winds through parts of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Montana, then out of the south in parts of the Dakotas here. And those winds are going to keep moving east through Saskatchewan into Manitoba as the hurricane moves very quickly. This is now by 7 a.m. Friday. It should already be up here very close to the Tennessee and Georgia border. And then the low curls up right almost over the Ohio River according to the European model. So we could get some very strong winds throughout Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois on this. And that low just sits there. And then eventually, by the time we get into Saturday, it's just a broad system that's been absorbed by the upper level trough that's in place. So the winds are going to weaken, and you'll see it almost just fade away to nothing. Meanwhile, another storm system is moving here across the northern plains of the United States. That frontal boundary that it'll eventually drag right through, so the front's here, but when it gets into this area, we're going to really drop off the humidity. Going to bring in some cooler air with this. We'll talk more about that in a few moments. But I wanted to kind of give you a zoomed-in view of what we're expecting. There we go. In terms of total accumulated winds, this is maximum wind gusts. We'll just take this out there through a full week. So a lot of 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts here. And as we take a look at it, let's just open this in a new tab real quick, and we can zoom in a bit and just show you what's going on in the southeast according to the European model. So wind speeds here off my color bar, which stops at 102. So we are expecting, like I said, category 3 strength winds, maybe a bit stronger right on shore. But just take note how the model continues to keep strong winds into central and southern Georgia. Follow this track here, pushing up against the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Smokies, and even some stronger winds that curl around into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. Wind speeds here could be gusting at times 40 to 50 miles an hour. We see that also in the GFS. So here's kind of the GFS view over the next 5 days. Let's go ahead and take a closer look in there at the southeast. And again, we see wind speeds easily getting over that 70 mile an hour range. So we're going to get back up into hurricane strength at 74 miles an hour. We're going to be on the lookout for these very strong winds as this system curls through here. So this is the wrong kind of wind. I mean, I'm thinking about Corn Belt here. Too much wind with rain. This is going to be causing some major issues with the quality of the crop in this area. Now, peanuts, cotton, I mean, there's so many crops down here that are going to be impacted in a very negative way by this system. But it looks as though it's going to be strong enough to possibly trigger, trigger insured losses, I think. From there, let's go have a look at the high-res NAM. We have a few things to watch. We have the rain moving through this morning into the northeast. We have the broad shield of rain that's out ahead of this system, which is already causing our flooding threat. And we can see, let's get a refresh on that, sorry. Let's see what's coming through the Pacific Northwest as well. There's the next front right through here, the parts of British Columbia and the Puget Sound. So this is tonight. This is midnight. And we can see that according to the NAM, landfall could be somewhere closer to 10 or 11 o'clock, but we don't often rely on the NAM for getting that exact. But the high-res NAM is pulling this through and letting it spin over southern Illinois, southern Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. In fact, let's just do this. Let's also take this into the southeast and just play it forward. So this is simulated radar. Okay, 11 p.m. I think the greatest challenge with this is I feel like we've detailed the wind threat and the flooding threat. I think it's knowing how far to the north the rain is going to move. And we're going to take a look at some of the model forecasts of that in a second. So that's all the way through Saturday, 2 o'clock. If we take a look at these these precipitation maps, what I think will be most challenging in terms of just figuring out where this northward extent is going to be this line here. But if we zoom in on the southeast, let's do like we've done all week. There's the southeast. Again, this is in addition to what's already fallen, another 7 to 12 inches of rain. Very heavy, widespread 1 to 5 inches across Georgia. And we can now see most of Tennessee and Kentucky covered in 2 to 5 inches of rain as well from the WPC. This is the national blend of models. There's their national view. Let's zoom in here to the southeast and just get a look. Very similar to the WPC. This is now the European Artificial Intelligence. Again, this is the model that nailed this early. There's its precipitation forecast. Another 10 inches of rain here. Now this includes what's been falling since midnight last night, but still impressive. The GFS, V16, zooming in there. Again, very heavy rainfall amounts. And let's keep going. This is the GFS ensemble. So let's just get to the southeast real quick. And this is the European HRES, high res. There's the national view. Let's get in here to the southeast real quick again. Much higher rainfall totals here. 7, 8, 9 inches, another 10 inches here. Man, this is interesting. Notice the European model. there. That dry air intrusion is what's going to be interesting for Tennessee in this forecast, and Arkansas. And last one, this would be the European ensemble. Okay, how about some probability maps? This is the chance of getting an inch in the next 10 days. No surprises there. Should have got a new model running, yeah. That's chance of 2 inches. Here's the chance at 4. And here's the chance at 8. So right now, the European ensemble has a 90% or better chance of 8 more inches of rainfall here and here. The drier side of this, that's the chance of staying under a ½ inch over the next 10 days. Here's the chance of staying under a 1/10. Extremely dry in the middle part of the United States and to the west. So let's take that and start to build out a broader picture here by first talking about what might follow this. So this is the European model's 10-day forecast of tropical depression formation. So this is Isaac, this is Helene, this is possibly our next named system here. I'm looking at this. There's something again coming out of the Bay of Campeche, out of Central America, out of parts of Mexico. And we just need to be aware that this is a time of year, we talked about it, gosh, was that two Mondays ago, that this is where we tend to get the development. And if you look across our week 2 forecasts, every one of them has something in the Gulf. See it? While the interior of the United States is expected to be very dry, there is something going on in the Gulf. And that dryness in the interior of the U.S. is critical to what's going on right now with the winds that are coming through and the harvest progress and the need of moisture for fall field work. We have a substantial portion of Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the whole Great Lakes states into the Northeast. Even though it's raining here this morning, that's been extremely dry so far this month in September. Some places having their driest Septembers on record, and the records again begin in 1893. Been dry in the Southwest, been dry in parts of Washington despite yesterday's storms that came through here. And so this is just an important map to look at. We're going to look at a little more detail in this compared to a year ago as well. But I want to give you a quick update on the flow, all right? So as we play this forward, here's the interaction. Let's restart that. There we go. The interaction we were expecting. The Fujiwara effect, the cutoff low, finally leaves once this trough kicks it out by Monday, gets over to the east. And then you know that following this will be a frontal boundary on October 1st, 2nd, 3rd that dips down into the Midwest. We'll show you the temperatures in that in a few moments. But I just keep seeing the same thing. Our source region is here and here for storm systems, big ones, big lows. We just see those coming out, but they're rolling across the Canadian border. We got more. I mean, there's just another one here, but ridging in between. So if you can avoid the cooler air that might come through, then you're going to go back over quite warm as we get into that point in October. Take a look at the frost risk. We now are starting to see this in the western Dakotas and here across this part of Montana, of course, at higher elevation as well. The timeline on these temperatures is not today. I mean, my goodness, we might crack 100 degrees in parts of South Dakota. This is Friday's temperatures, Saturday, Sunday. The transition is going to happen early next week. Watch. Here's into Monday. That's the cooler air. Tuesday morning, we had that frost threat in this area. Then getting out there to Wednesday. Look how quickly the temperatures rebound. So we're going to be watching for temperatures to maybe swing 60 degrees in this area over the next 7 days alone. If we look at the actual dew point, remember this is not temperature but a measure of moisture. I want to just point out that front that's coming through on the 30th. Here it starts on the 30th, getting into October 1. So by 1 a.m., I mean, that front is a sharp divide here between very humid air that's leaving and much, much drier air, which gives us this risk of frost. Again, when is this? This is Tuesday morning that I'm concerned about in this area. Dew points down here almost to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. We then play that front sweeps through, lives in throughout the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, tries to get over to the Northeast. And then there's a rebound right away after it of moist air, temperatures really cranking up, and you'll see your boundary kind of sitting here in the Western Plains after that. Looking at just a quick matrix from the European model across the top and the GFS across the bottom. These are your day 0 through 5, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15 temperatures. And overall, we don't really break away from the pattern. I'm still hung up on this being the source region of troughs. all associated with that West Pacific oscillation, the movement in the MJO, ridging in this area, or kind of reflection trough here. That narrative hasn't really changed. I haven't found reason to break from it. And that's why if you look out there again at the month of October, well, where the troughs live, that's where the flow gets sent. And if we keep ridging in this area, it's drier. I said the wild card always has been what could come out of the tropics at any given point in the month of October. I still say that this is the greatest potential for busting the forecast is down here. In the event we don't have any tropical systems, there's going to be rapid onset of drought behind this. But if one, it just takes one to come through here and change this all up. So that's the latest October forecast. It's even mimicked by the CFSV2. This is the 10th through the 16th, the 17th through the 23rd. Drier conditions here and here. So we'll keep building on that for tomorrow's video. We'll also talk a bit more about La Nina and its, how much it's continuing to develop. What are the trade winds up to? And if that makes a difference in the fall forecast, we'll review again tomorrow. But I want to finish up with a bit on South America. Some satellite data again yesterday just shows widespread wildfire smoke. There's been at multiple times frontal boundaries tucked away down here across the south, a lot of cloud cover and rain from this. But if you look back over the last month, that has been the spot that's been the wettest. So we've had some places already getting in the last month, this would be 4 to 6 inches of rainfall in this color here. And some of that's been much higher in this area. So we're dealing with a flooding problem down south. If you take a look at our newest root zone soil moisture, you can see that flooding. But throughout much of Argentina, getting into bigger spots in Brazil, we have, deficits in our soil moisture right now as measured by satellite. Now, this is not the perfect way to do this. This is not but it's one of the more useful ways we can, given that we don't have widespread observations in this area. A year ago, it looked like this. Very dry in Argentina, coming off of 3 years of drought, flooding in southern Brazil again, but not nearly as dry at this point. We were rapidly planting a crop here as the rains were coming in. What happened was they came in late September and early October, and then they just didn't rain very much at all for October, November, December. The latest forecast over the next 10 days continues to put down heavy rain in Rio Grande do Sul, Paraguay, parts of Argentina. We're still drier in the interior, although you see quite a bit of rainfall in northern Brazil, getting up into the countries, of course, that line northern South America. And but still not an early sign of an onset of the monsoon. And the newest update for the month of October trended even drier. So it's just going to be a question of when does it start, what's supporting it, what are the models doing? But even from yesterday, that was yesterday's forecast, to today, we got a much drier signal in here. And it's certainly, go back 10 runs ago. That was at Monday. Sorry about that. Let's go back here. It's just waffling all over the place with total rainfall. I'd still say there's moisture in place. It's just getting the high to develop to bring the moisture through and then overcome the dryness that's in place right now. That's what it's going to take. And these forecasts just continue to bounce back and forth, and the newest one is dry. That's the main takeaway. The newest one is much drier through October. So that could be a major sign of a slowdown in planting. We'll watch it carefully, and I'll just keep you up to date. With that, though, I'm going to wrap it up. You have a good rest of your day. Stay safe in the South, please. Thank you.